They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Is Mel Gibson Australian or American? What's his religion? And how many biological kids does he have? At one time a huge movie star, even crowned People magazine's inaugural Sexiest Man Alive in 1985. And then in '87 hit Lethal Weapon, and now he was one of Hollywood's most bankable action stars. But Gibson struggled to find work for over a decade after the accusations of racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia began surfacing. Yep, Mel's shocking behaviors make this one of our most shocking videos yet. Grab your popcorn and get ready to be shocked as we take a deeper dive into Mel. Mad Max. Mad Max was inspired by events surrounding the 1973 oil crisis, and screenwriter James McCausland said the embargo revealed the ferocity with which Australians would defend their right to fill a tank. American-born Mel Gibson earned $10 grand for playing Max, and most of the extras were paid in beer. When he was cast, Mel was still a drama student and a relative unknown who didn't even appear in the trailers or previews. However, the film opened up the global market for Australian films, grossing over $100 million.
What's he mean no one showed?
It also set a new record for the most profitable independent film of all time, a title it held until the 1999 release of The Blair Witch Project, a title that film held a bit more securely than The Camera.
I'm sorry to everyone.
Director George Miller used an actual biker gang for the action sequences and described the entire experience as guerrilla filmmaking. The crew closed down roads, but shot the dangerous stunts without permits, and the actors rode to set in costume. Each actor carried a letter asking for law enforcement's understanding and cooperation in the event that they were actually pulled over. The Victoria Police eventually became interested in the production and helped the crew by closing down roads and escorting the vehicles. Now, low-budget indie filmmakers continue to shoot films without permits today, deciding to take their chances while shooting in public. But Hollywood productions have much more to lose, and exposure to lawsuits means that studios tend to not take the unnecessary risks. Producer and director Alec Baldwin found that out the hard way in 2021 when cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed on the set of Rust. Alec was charged with involuntary manslaughter, and Hutchins' family filed a civil suit in June 2024 after the criminal charges were dismissed. Mad Max was initially banned in Sweden and New Zealand, but was finally released with an R18 certificate in 1983 after the success of the first sequel,
The Road Warrior, rated R.
Start tomorrow at the Cedar Bluff and Twin Air Drive-In. Check newspapers for showtimes.
The Year of Living Dangerously. The Year of Living Dangerously was set in Indonesia during the 13th of September movement, a failed 1965 coup d'etat that resulted in the assassination of 6 generals and the subsequent fatalities of nearly 80,000 others. The majority of the movie was filmed in the Philippines after permission to shoot in Jakarta was denied. 3 weeks into production, the set was shut down after the crew began receiving death threats. But Gibson was dismissive of the threats and said, "I just assumed that when there are so many, it must mean nothing is really going to happen. I mean, if they meant to kill us, why send a note?" And yeah, I kinda think Mel might have a crazy point here. Crazy being a big word.
Okay.
But principal photography was eventually moved to Sydney for the crew's safety, and the film was banned in Indonesia until 1999. However, the film was finally screened in November 2000, 2 years after Suharto was forced from office. Mrs. Soful. In Mrs. Soful, Diane Keaton plays the wife of a prison warden who falls in love with an inmate and eventually helps him and his brother escape. Spoiler alert, maybe she doesn't? The film wasn't banned, but it received a lukewarm reception at the box office, and the critics were not kind.
Hope I didn't startle you.
Vincent Canby called it a very strange and maddening movie, and Roger Ebert called the film
It's kind of an anemic Bonnie and Clyde on the road.
And we mentioned the film because Gibson got into his first legal troubles during the production, when he rear-ended another vehicle while driving under the influence, and he received a 3-month driving ban in Toronto. Later that year, Sir Anthony Hopkins expressed concerns about Gibson's drinking while filming The Bounty. Hopkins said, quote, "Mel is a wonderful, wonderful fellow with a marvelous future. He's already something of a superstar, but he's in danger of blowing it unless he takes hold of himself. Pocahontas. From 1989 to 2002, Mel Gibson starred in 10 films that grossed at least $100 million each.
What could possibly be different about this one?
In 1995, he voiced John Smith, his first animated character in Disney's Pocahontas. Disney hired Native American consultants and actors to ensure as much cultural authenticity as possible, but activist groups condemned the film for its historical inaccuracies and claimed it featured outdated stereotypes. Pocahontas was produced at the same time as The Lion King, and Jeffrey Katzenberg considered it the Mouse's more prestigious project and a Best Picture contender.
But think how they squirm when they see how I glitter.
But the film was far less of a commercial success than Disney hoped for, and the animators who chose to instead work on Lion King laughed all the way to the bank. Braveheart.
This is our army. To join it, you give homage. I give homage to Scotland.
Mel Gibson donned a kilt in Braveheart, his sophomore directorial effort, and squared off against the tyrannical King Edward. Gibson actually believed he was at least a decade too old to portray William Wallace, but he loved working a continent away from the studio executives, so he did it. Several major battle scenes had to be reshot because the extras were wearing sunglasses or wristwatches, and Gibson himself admits that the film took plenty of historical liberties. Mel characterized the real William Wallace as a monster who was always burning people's villages down. Yep, pretty monstrous. He said, quote, "But we kind of shifted the balance a bit because somebody's got to be the good guy and somebody the bad guy, and every story has its own point of view. That was our bias." Braveheart was nominated for 10 Academy Awards and won 5, including Best Picture and Best Director for Mel. But GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, organized protests and claimed the film's portrayal of the Prince of Wales, who would be the future King Edward II, displayed a typical homophobic caricature.
What news of the North?
Nothing new, Your Majesty. We've sent riders to speed any word.
Historians actually widely disagree about whether or not Edward II was actually gay or bisexual, and many claim the stories of his homosexuality were fabricated by his enemies to discredit him. This wasn't the first time homophobia allegations were leveled against Gibson. In a 1991 interview with the Spanish newspaper El País, Gibson was heavily criticized for making insensitive remarks about gays and said, "With this look, who's going to think I'm gay?" In a July 1995 Playboy interview, Gibson was directly asked if he would apologize to the LGBTQ community, and he responded, "I'll apologize when hell freezes over." Conspiracy theory. In Conspiracy Theory, Mel Gibson plays Jerry Fletcher, a cab driver who quickly finds out that it's not paranoia if they're really after you. Julia Roberts plays Alice Sutton, a government employee who helps him unravel which of his theories was actually true when the spooks start closing in. But anyway, back to Mel being Mel. Gibson hosted an on-set seminar during the production for gay and lesbian filmmakers and GLAAD representatives in an attempt to improve relations. The event was actually organized by Cher's son and Dancing with the Stars alum Chaz Bono. And Gibson's publicist said it was a nice dialogue between people who have a lot in common. However, the GLAAD representatives noted that Gibson did not offer that apology that they were hoping for. The Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson is a devout Catholic who personally raised the money for the Passion of the Christ after 7 studios passed. He said that regardless of the cost of the project, the film would be good for the soul, and released it in Latin and Aramaic so the actors' performances could speak for themselves. The film recouped its $30 million budget in 2 days and became the first R-rated film in history to gross over $300 million domestically. However, it was immediately banned in multiple countries. Islam forbids visual depictions of a prophet, and the film was completely banned in Kuwait and Bahrain. The Malaysian government allowed Christians to see it, but only churches could sell tickets. The film was also widely criticized for promoting anti-Semitism, and Slate magazine's David Edelstein called it the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre in reference to its violent content. The Passion was also the final movie former Iraq President Saddam Hussein watched before he was put down in 2006. According to his guards, Hussein was amazed and shocked by the cruelty of the film and claimed that Iraqi people would never have treated Jesus this way. Apocalypto. Apocalypto is a fictionalized account of a young warrior who narrowly escapes human sacrifice in the final days of the Mayan Empire. The film was inspired by ancient Mayan texts and Spanish missionary depictions, and Gibson went to extraordinary lengths to ensure accuracy in costuming and set design. However, his arrest during post-production hung over the film's promotional efforts like a solar eclipse. His arrest for drunk driving in Malibu in July 2006. The original arrest report was leaked to TMZ after the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department allegedly attempted to release a doctored report. According to the arresting officer, Deputy James Mee, Gibson became agitated, threatened to get even, and made several anti-Semitic remarks. When Gibson got home from jail, it was completely empty. His wife, Robin, had already moved out with the kids. Mel immediately apologized, saying, "I acted like a person completely out of control when I was arrested. I disgraced myself and my family with my behavior. And for that, I am truly sorry. I have battled with the disease of alcoholism for all of my adult life, and profoundly regret my horrific relapse." Gibson later released a second, lengthier apology to the Jewish community. However, Apocalypto was a commercial and critical success, grossing over $120 million at the box office and receiving 3 Academy Award nominations. And a handful of reviewers seemed to look past his off-camera antics, including the New York Times' A.O. Scott. He remarked, "Say what you will about him, about his problem with booze or his problem with Jews. He is a serious filmmaker." So what's Mel up to today? Well, he has been in a relationship with Rosalind Ross since 2014, and the couple welcomed Lars, Gibson's 9th child, to the family in 2017. In 2020, Mel Gibson told People he's been sober for 10 years and has recently been praised for his support for the Me Too movement. Gibson was asked about producer Harvey Weinstein's sexual abuse allegations when he was promoting the comedy Daddy's Home, and he said, quote, "My heart goes out to the victims. I'm glad they spoke up." Gibson also offered to testify in court against Weinstein, but was never called in as a witness. So hey, maybe Mel does have some good in him, but we sure hope he's done with the bad. I mean, why's he gotta be bad? He's always got mad. That's been our look at Mel Gibson films that would be banned today. And now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Mel Gibson is one of our generation's best action stars, or are his films overrated? What is your all-time favorite Mel Gibson film? Was it one we mentioned or not? I'm going conspiracy theory, or hey, Bird on a Wire is golden. If you know, you know. From all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you so much for watching and have a great day.